Usually when we talk about like a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of total precision.
Right. It's very clinical.
Exactly. It's like engineering. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is. Broken or not broken, super clean.
Yeah, there's no ambiguity there.
But then, I mean, when you look at our economic lives, our careers, that x-ray machine is just completely shattered.
Oh, totally.
We operate in this landscape where people spend their entire lives fundamentally misinterpreting what security actually means. And mostly it's because they're looking at the completely wrong data points.
They're looking at the symptoms, not the structure.
Right. We
Okay.
mistake a monthly paycheck for safety. Like viewing that direct deposit, hitting our checking account every 2 weeks as the ultimate security blanket.
It is the ultimate illusion of stability. I mean, when you really strip it down to the studs, a job means you are renting out your time.
Your most finite resource.
Exactly, your absolute most finite resource, just to build the infrastructure of someone else's dream. You're basically trading a capped upside for this temporary removal of anxiety.
And that gets us right into the core debate for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are drawing a massive, uncompromising line in the sand today based on our sources. It's the difference between living in a golden cage and walking out into the open desert.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, because the golden cage is comfortable, right? The temperature is controlled, the food arrives right on schedule. But the open desert is terrifying. It's vast, but it's literally the only place where you can actually build an empire.
You have to leave the cage to build anything of your own.
Right. And there's this philosophy from Dr. Shishir Gupta, the founder of Startup Planes, that frames this perfectly. I mean, he's advised over 1,000 businesses and moved over 100 million in funding, and he tells founders something so profound.
What's the quote?
He says, "A job feeds you for a month, but binds your leverage to a desk. A business starves you for a season, but builds an automated engine that feeds your generations forever." Yeah. Stop selling the seed, start planting the orchard.
That is, I mean, the mechanics of that analogy are profound when you apply them to capital markets. Think about it. The seed is your time.
Your hours.
Right. It's your hourly labor, that immediate consumable value you create. So when you sell the seed, you get to eat today.
Which feels good.
It feels great. But tomorrow, you wake up with an empty hand and an empty stomach, and you have to go find another seed to sell all over again.
So planting the orchard requires you to, forego that immediate gratification.
Exactly. It requires a season of starvation or, at least extreme financial and psychological discomfort just to cultivate an asset.
But once it's grown.
Once that orchard is grown, the root system is established. It bears fruit whether you are actively watering it that day or not.
That is such a crucial point. So for everyone listening, to really understand how to escape that linear trap of constantly selling our seeds, we need to dig into the physical laws of how value is created.
The physics of wealth, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Archimedes had that famous concept, right? Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I will move the world.
He was talking about multiplying force.
Right, using a rigid bar and a fulcrum. In the modern economy, the physics are totally identical, but the levers are completely different. And a job, by its very definition, has zero structural leverage.
None at all.
You operate at a strict 1-to-1 ratio of hours to dollars.
Right, like, let's say you are a corporate consultant and you're billing $500 an hour.
Which sounds amazing.
The optics of that look like incredible success, right? You have a really high income. But the moment you get sick or decide to take a month off or simply just stop typing on your keyboard, your revenue drops to absolute zero.
Because you have no lever.
Exactly. You're just using your bare hands to move a very expensive boulder. A business, however, is a machine built entirely out of structural levers. And today, those levers are code, capital, product, and media.
Naval Ravikant makes this exact point in our source material about the impossibility of getting wealthy renting out your time. You absolutely have to own equity.
Because time is capped.
Right. Renting your time is the ultimate anti-lever because you are constantly capped by the 24-hour day. No matter how much you charge, you hit a ceiling.
You just can't scale it.
And if you contrast that with Eric Ries's definition of a business from the lean startup, you really start to see the psychological divide here. Ries defines a business as an institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
I think uncertainty is the operative word there. Like, it is the actual dividing line.
How so?
Well, An employee seeks to eliminate uncertainty through compliance. They want the job description, the standard operating procedure, the guaranteed biweekly direct deposit.
They want it all mapped out.
Right. They are willingly trading their leverage for certainty.
Yeah.
But an entrepreneur, they step into the void to monetize uncertainty through execution.
Monetizing uncertainty.
I like that. Yeah, they find a space where no rules exist. They figure out how to create value out of total chaos. And because they absorbed all the risk of that uncertainty, they capture the exponential upside.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's look at this from the perspective of someone commuting right now, listening to this deep dive, sitting in a very nice car, holding a super impressive title.
Okay.
They might be thinking, well, what if I'm the vice president of marketing? What if I'm a senior director at a Fortune 500 company?
Sure, high up the ladder.
Yeah. I get bonuses, restricted stock units, I've got a corner office, a massive team under me. Isn't a high-paying executive job structurally different from a regular hourly job?
Well, the compensation is definitely different, but the structural reality, it's completely unchanged.
Exactly. To me, a VP title or a massive salary isn't freedom. It's just upgrading your cell in the golden cage.
That's exactly what it is.
You get a much better mattress, you get premium birdseed, they put a beautiful mahogany swing in there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the cage door is still locked from the outside.
And someone else has the key.
Right. The boundaries of your existence, your strategic direction, and ultimately your equity cap are still dictated by the person who actually owns the cage.
Because your upside is always capped by someone else's spreadsheet. And you can test this reality regardless of your title.
The litmus test.
Yeah, there's a framework you can apply to your own economic situation right now to see where you actually stand.
So what's the first test?
The first question is purely mathematical. Can your income 10x next year without you working 10x the hours?
The scalability test.
Exactly. If you want to jump from $1 million to $10 million, can you do that without physically working 240 hours a day?
Which is physically impossible.
Right. For a W-2 employee, the answer is always no. A VP might negotiate a 20% bump in their bonus, but their income cannot physically decouple from their time.
Then you look at the infrastructure you've built. That's the second part. Warren Buffett always warned that if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die.
It's a brutal reality.
It is. So you have to ask yourself, does your infrastructure create value while you're unconscious? Are there servers processing transactions in Singapore while you're asleep in New York?
Are your automated marketing funnels acquiring customers?
Right. Is your commercial real estate appreciating?
Because if your revenue generation requires your physical consciousness and active participation, you do not own an asset. You are the asset.
Oof. You are the asset. That hits hard.
It does. And the final check on this is the systems test. What happens when you step away? Can you leave your operation for 6 months, go completely off the grid, and return to find a more profitable system than when you left?
For a job, it literally disappears the moment you walk away.
Oh, they will backfill your VP role within a month.
A true business thrives on your absence because you've built independent systems and hired operators to run them. If the operation collapses without you, you don't own a business.
You just own a job that you happen to be the boss of.
And what's crazy is that this isn't some accident. The system is actively designed this way. Henry Ford once remarked that if the public actually understood our banking and monetary system, there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning.
He was entirely right.
He understood that the global financial architecture is engineered to reward equity owners and heavily tax salaried labor.
It is quite literally woven into the tax code. W-2 wage earners are taxed at the highest marginal rates.
And it's taken out immediately.
Exactly. Those taxes are extracted before the money even hits their account. You never even see it. But business owners, they are taxed on what's left over after they reinvest in their assets.
Plus, capital gains are treated differently.
Significantly differently. Capital gains are taxed at much lower rates to incentivize investment. And furthermore, fiat inflation actively erodes the purchasing power of a linear wage,
while simultaneously inflating the nominal value of the hard assets and equities owned by the entrepreneur. So the system mathematically punishes the seller of time.
It's totally rigged in favor of leverage.
Steve Jobs talked about this perfectly. He warned young builders not to waste their time living someone else's life, and specifically, not to be trapped by dogma.
How did he define dogma?
He defined it as living with the results of other people's thinking.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Isn't it? When you work a job, no matter how high up you are operating inside the boundaries of someone else's imagination.
They designed the workflow.
They designed the product, the workflow, and your compensation cap. You are just executing your thoughts. Escaping that requires crossing what we can call the billion-dollar chasm.
And if anyone listening still believes that being a CEO of a massive company is economically equivalent to being a founder, the raw data from the Fortune 500 completely shatters that illusion.
Oh, the numbers are wild.
They are. The highest paid executive employees on earth, the people at the absolute zenith of corporate achievement, they're basically rounding errors compared to their founding counterparts.
Let's run through some of these head-to-head comparisons because they are staggering. Take Alphabet, right, the parent company of Google. Sundar Pichai is the CEO.
And he's universally recognized as brilliant.
A total genius.
Yeah.
And he is one of the highest paid executives in corporate history. After decades of climbing the ultimate corporate ladder, his accumulated net worth is estimated at around $1.5 billion.
Which is an incomprehensible amount of money for a normal person.
It's massive. But then you look at Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They stepped away from daily management years ago. But because they retained their foundational founder shares...
Their equity.
Yes, their equity.
Yeah.
Larry Page's net worth sits around $150 billion, and Sergey Brin is right at $140 billion. Pichai, the guy running the daily operations of the entire global machine, has accumulated roughly 1% of the wealth owned by the founders who built the structural engine.
1%. And you see the exact same math at Microsoft.
Satya Nadella.
Right. Satya Nadella is widely considered one of the greatest turnaround CEOs in modern history. I mean, he took a stagnant legacy software company and added trillions in market cap by pivoting them aggressively to the cloud.
He literally saved Microsoft's dominance.
He did. And his reward for that generational execution, a personal net worth of roughly $1 billion. Meanwhile, Bill Gates, even after giving away tens of billions to philanthropy over 2 decades, maintains a net worth floating around $130 billion.
It's the same story at Apple. Tim Cook takes over in 2011, builds Apple into the most profitable cash-generating hardware machine on the entire planet. His net worth is about $2.2 billion.
And Steve Jobs?
If Steve Jobs were alive, his equity stakes in Apple and Disney would easily place him north of $100 billion. Even his estate sits around $14 billion after massive liquidations.
Wow.
Then look at Amazon. Andy Jassy essentially built AWS, right? Cloud computing arm that subsidizes basically all of Amazon's retail profit. He takes over as CEO, and his net worth is about $500 million.
While Jeff Bezos steps down, keeps his ownership stake, and routinely spans $200 billion to $220 billion.
It's just everywhere. Even in traditional retail, you see this chasm. High-profile turnaround CEOs hired to steer Starbucks get massive $50 million to $100 million compensation packages. But that pales in comparison to Howard Schultz, who built the Starbucks system and holds a net worth of $3.3 billion.
Or Safra Catz at Oracle. She's one of the highest paid executives globally, with about $1.2 billion.
And Larry Ellison, the co-founder.
He holds $170 billion.
So why does this massive gap exist? Why is it mathematically so tilted?
It all comes down to the equity premium and how capital markets discount cash flows. The market places an exponential premium on the ownership of infinite life assets over finite human labor.
Right.
These CEOs are the best in the world at executing tasks and managing risk, but their entire life's earnings are often generated by the founders in a single strong afternoon of trading on Wall Street.
Just a few hours of stock movement.
Exactly. The employee manages the machine, the entrepreneur owns the machine.
And the absolute ceiling of this phenomenon just hit us recently on June 12, 2026. Elon Musk became the world's first US dollar trillionaire following the SpaceX IPO.
Incredible.
His wealth hit an intraday peak of $1.4 trillion right after the IPO before settling in. This is the ultimate extreme case study in exponential equity growth versus the corporate staircase.
If you trace the mechanics of Musk's wealth, it perfectly illustrates the required elements here: equity leverage, capital-efficient assets, and systemic scale.
Let's trace it, because he didn't start with generational wealth.
No, not at all. He started during the first internet boom. He co-founded Zip2, which provided city guide software to newspapers. And when Compaq bought it in 1999, he netted $22 million.
Now, a highly intelligent person with an employee mindset takes that $22 million, buys a nice house, puts the rest in municipal bonds or a safe index fund, and just protects their downside.
They seek certainty.
Right. They say, I'm good for life.
But Musk took almost his entire payout and rolled it into X.com, which was an attempt to revolutionize online banking, and that eventually became PayPal.
Which was a huge risk.
It wasn't just a risky bet, it was a structured bet on the internet eating the financial system. And when eBay bought PayPal in 2002, he walked away with $180 million after taxes.
Again, the employee mindset would say, you won the game, take the chips off the table.
Take the money and run. But instead, he bets his entire fortune on SpaceX, Tesla, and SolarCity, all simultaneously.
And by 2008, during the financial crisis, both Tesla and SpaceX were bleeding cash.
Oh, he was so financially strained, he was literally borrowing money from friends to pay his personal rent.
He was staring into the abyss.
He was monetizing extreme uncertainty. He was in that starvation season we talked about. He was planting the orchard in the harshest possible winter.
But then the mechanics of equity kicked in. In 2010, the Tesla IPO pushed his net worth to $650 million. By 2019, through SpaceX commercial cargo missions and Tesla scaling Model 3 production, he hit the 20 to 25 billion bracket.
And then the tech boom from 2020 to 2025 vaulted him to $300 billion.
Culminating in the SpaceX IPO in 2026 that catapulted him over the $1 trillion mark.
It's just wild. And you have to realize, an employee's income moves like a staircase.
Right, you get a 3% inflation adjustment, you take a step up.
You get a promotion to regional manager, you step up again. But an entrepreneur's wealth moves like a rocket launch. It stays flat on the launch pad, burning massive amounts of capital and fuel, looking like a total failure to everyone watching.
Right, everyone thinks you're crazy.
And then it suddenly breaks the atmosphere and goes exponential. You simply cannot save your way to $1 billion on a salary.
So if the mathematical reality is this overwhelming, the obvious question for anyone listening is, why doesn't everyone just do it? Why are millions of brilliant, highly capable people still sitting in cubicles?
It has to be a psychological block, right? Employee isn't just a tax bracket. It's a deeply ingrained psychological condition.
You can see this clearly when people try to escape it, but they fall into what our sources call the freelancer trap.
The freelancer trap is fascinating because it is a complete false positive.
What do you mean?
People quit their corporate agency job, they set up an LLC, and they start doing freelance graphic design or consulting. And they think they are entrepreneurs because they don't have a boss.
Oh, I see this all the time.
But structurally, they're still trading direct hours for a direct client fee. They are taxed as ordinary income, they carry full liability, and they have no underlying asset value to sell at the end of the day.
So they didn't build a business.
No, they've just created a new, highly stressful job where the boss is now a constantly rotating cast of demanding clients.
So to understand if someone is actually shifting their psychology, we have to look at the 6 dimensions of the mindset matrix from the deep dive sources. This breaks down how builders view the world differently than employees.
The first dimension is primary currency.
Let's break that down.
For an employee, their internal ledger tracks time. They ask themselves, how many hours did I put in today and what am I owed for that labor? But for the entrepreneur, the primary currency is leverage and assets. They ask, what automated systems, software architecture, or brand equity did I build today that will produce value tomorrow without me?
They don't care if it took 2 hours or 20 hours.
Exactly. Time isn't the metric.
The second dimension is their relationship to risk. The employee focuses on avoidance and compliance. They want the rule book so they can avoid getting fired.
Keep your head down.
Exactly. The entrepreneur focuses on monetization. They view uncertainty not as a threat, but as a market inefficiency. They know that if there's a well-defined rule book, the margins have already been squeezed to zero by competitors.
Yeah.
Outsized rewards only exist in unmapped terrain.
Then you have the third dimension, the financial horizon.
Which is huge.
Oh, massive. The employee lives on a linear horizon. They calculate their life in monthly payouts and incremental annual bonuses. The entrepreneur operates on an exponential horizon.
Starvation season again.
Exactly. They accept short-term financial starvation and are completely fine looking like a fool to their peers for 3 to 5 years because they understand the mathematics of compounding equity.
The fourth dimension is where you really see the day-to-day difference.
Yeah.
Focus of activity. The employee focuses on the execution of tasks. Success is clearing the inbox and completing the to-do list flawlessly.
Checking the boxes.
Right. The entrepreneur focuses on the orchestration of systems. Success isn't checking a box. It's building an independent mechanism, whether that's writing an algorithm or hiring a specialized team that checks those boxes automatically in perpetuity.
Which leads directly into the fifth dimension, problem solving.
Yeah.
An employee relies on escalation. When a roadblock hits, the instinct is, who do I report this to? Whose department is responsible for this?
Passing the buck.
Yes. The entrepreneur defaults to extreme ownership. When a crisis hits, They don't look for someone to blame. They look at the structural architecture of the business and ask, how do we rebuild this workflow so this failure state never happens again?
And the final sixth dimension is the target moat. An employee protects their position in the market through credentials, degrees, certifications, prestigious corporate titles. They want letters after their name to signal value.
But an entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur protects their position through defensibility. They build proprietary data sets, exclusive vendor relationships, massive distribution channels, and economies of scale.
Robert Kiyosaki captured this employee-employer dynamic perfectly in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He pointed out that employees work just hard enough not to be fired.
And owners pay just enough so workers won't quit.
Exactly. It is a Mexican standoff of total mediocrity. And the only way to break out of that standoff is to build the system yourself.
So how do people actually execute this leap? I mean, practically speaking. Let's get into the mechanics of the transformation for the listener.
We can group the most legendary transitions from the sources into 3 distinct leverage playbooks.
Let's start with Playbook A, the infinite lever of code and digital platforms.
Jeff Bezos in 1994 is the perfect example here. He was a highly paid senior vice president at D.E. Shaw, which is this elite quantitative hedge fund.
He had the ultimate secure trajectory. He was set.
Totally set. But he was analyzing early internet adoption rates and saw web usage growing at 2,300% a year. He realized his upside at the hedge fund was capped by his physical hours analyzing markets.
Because a local bookstore clerk operates linearly.
Right.
They hand a book to a customer, take the cash, and do it again.
Right, but Bezos recognized that code has a marginal cost of 0. Once you build the database, the cost of adding an additional listing is effectively 0, and the cost of serving a customer in Seattle is the exact same as serving one in Tokyo.
So he built an automated digital shelf that scaled infinitely without requiring a proportional increase in human labor.
You see this exact same digital leverage with WhatsApp.
Oh, this is a crazy story.
It is. In 2009, Brian Acton and Jan Koum applied for jobs at Facebook and were rejected.
Denied jobs at the company that would eventually buy them.
Exactly. So instead of hunting for another corporate salary, they built a messaging asset using Erlang, which is a programming language specifically designed for massive concurrency.
That technical choice was their leverage.
It was everything. They didn't need thousands of employees. A team of fewer than 50 engineers built a cross-platform infrastructure that managed the messaging traffic of over 400 million active users.
That ratio is insane. 50 people to 400 million users.
They completely decoupled human effort from digital distribution. So when Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014, it proved that owning a scalable digital asset completely eclipses renting your engineering skills to a corporation.
And Reed Hastings with Netflix is the perfect contrast between a physical job model and a digital leverage model, because Blockbuster was a massive asset-heavy operation.
Oh yeah, they had thousands of retail stores, thousands of employees, super expensive commercial leases, physical inventory.
They were constrained by local geography.
Completely. And Hastings started with mailing DVDs, which was still physical logistics, but he eventually pivoted to the ultra-digital lever streaming software.
Right.
He hosted the architecture on AWS, completely eliminating human retail labor from the delivery loop. While Blockbuster's staff was tied to store hours and foot traffic, Netflix's streaming engine served millions of movies concurrently across the globe.
Code destroyed the physical retail moat. But okay, let's pivot for a second. What if you aren't an engineer?
Right. What if you don't know how to code?
Exactly. What if you operate in the physical world? That brings us to Playbook B, the physical multiplier. And Ray Kroc with McDonald's is the absolute masterclass here.
The McDonald brothers had a highly profitable, hyper-efficient burger joint in San Bernardino, but they were physically tied to the kitchen.
They were operators executing tasks.
Yes. Ray Kroc stepped in as a franchisor, but he actually struggled initially because taking a small percentage of a franchisee's hamburger sales isn't a great business model.
It's too slow.
The breakthrough came from Harry Sunborn, his financial consultant. Sunborn realized the leverage wasn't in the food, it was in the real estate. They created the Franchise Realty Corporation.
Right. Sunborn told Kroc to lease the land and then sublease it to the franchisees at a 20% to 40% markup, or a percentage of store sales, whichever was higher.
Exactly. Kroc built a corporate vehicle that controlled the physical bottleneck, the land itself. The franchisees were legally bound to the real estate, and if they lost their franchise, they lost the property.
Wow.
So the McDonald brothers had a high-paying culinary job. Kroc built a bank that dealt in real estate and basically charged rent disguised as hamburgers.
That's brilliant. And Howard Schultz did something similar with Starbucks, right? He was a marketing director for a tiny local coffee roaster in Seattle.
And the original owners were purists who wanted to maintain their small retail footprint. They just wanted to sell beans.
But Schultz realized that to scale, he had to take the manual culinary art of making espresso and turn it into a standardized operating procedure.
A system.
Right. He bought the brand, vertically integrated the supply chain to control the roasting process, and created an operational manual so precise that a barista in Tokyo and a barista in Chicago could produce the exact same beverage in the exact same amount of time.
He turned a local culinary job into a replicable global system.
And then there's Uber, founded by Garrett Camp and Travis Kalanick, which really represents a hybrid of physical and digital leverage.
Because traditional taxi dispatch was incredibly manual, right? Limited by human operators, radio ranges, and expensive city medallions. And the drivers only made money when their hands were actively on the wheel.
So what did Camp and Kalanick do?
They avoided the trap of buying cars, which is incredibly capital intensive, and they avoided hiring drivers as employees, which carries massive labor friction.
So smart.
They built an algorithm that acted as an automated trust broker between a rider and a driver. They shifted the physical asset burden entirely to independent contractors while they retain ownership of the coordination engine.
They scaled a platform that taxes millions of physical rides globally without actually owning a single vehicle.
Exactly.
All right, let's move to the third playbook, the creative mode, which is all about intellectual property and brand equity.
Or Michael Jordan is the perfect example here.
Oh, completely. When Jordan entered the NBA, athletes basically viewed shoe endorsements as a job.
You show up, smile for the camera,
Collect a flat fee, and go back to playing basketball.
But his agent, David Falk, fundamentally changed the economic model of sports marketing. He demanded a business model equity split.
They refused the flat fee and structured a royalty percentage on every single pair of Air Jordans sold.
Jordan transitioned from a highly paid performer, executing a task on the court, to a joint venture brand owner. And decades after his physical basketball career ended, that royalty asset still generates hundreds of millions annually.
Sarah Blakely with Spanx is another brilliant example of IP leverage. She was working this brutal job selling fax machines door-to-door in Florida. She was completely trapped in a linear, commission-based loop.
She was selling the seed.
Exactly. So she researched fabrics at night and came up with this footless pantyhose design.
And the key leverage point for Blakely was patent law. Instead of paying exorbitant legal fees or selling her idea to an existing hosiery manufacturer for just a tiny cut, she wrote her own patent application.
She retained 100% equity in the company.
100%. She controlled the manufacturing and scaled through retail distribution. She turned a personal pain point into a billion-dollar empire without ever taking outside venture capital, purely because she owned the IP.
And J.K. Rowling proves how copyright law can act as an infinite lever. If you work as a salaried copywriter, you get paid once to write text, and the copyright instantly belongs to your employer.
You have zero leverage.
None. Rowling spent years crafting the Harry Potter universe while relying on government benefits.
But because she maintained the intellectual property rights to her manuscripts, she created an asset that could be licensed across multiple mediums.
That single piece of creative property was replicated into millions of books, with zero additional creative labor on her part.
And then licensed for multi-billion-dollar film franchises and theme parks. IP ownership elevated her from poverty to billionaire status because copyright scales infinitely.
And finally, in this playbook, we have John Lasseter at Pixar. He was an animator at Disney, pushing for computer-generated 3D animation.
But Disney's corporate hierarchy was terrified of cannibalizing their 2D workflow, so they just fired him.
Huge mistake.
Massive. Lasseter ended up at a hardware spinoff funded by Steve Jobs, which became Pixar. But they didn't just operate as an animation studio for hire, taking contract jobs from bigger studios.
What did they do differently?
They built proprietary digital software rendering pipelines, specifically the RenderMan software. They built a systematic storytelling engine that produced massive hits, and they co-owned the films.
And Disney eventually became so dependent on Pixar's pipeline that they were forced to acquire the studio for $7.4 billion just to survive in the 3D era. All these stories really highlight Peter Drucker's rule that the best way to predict the future is to create it. But, seeing these monumental transformations can honestly feel paralyzing.
Oh, absolutely.
If you are listening to this right now, You might be totally convinced by the math and the leverage. You want the orchard. So you have rent due next week, you have a mortgage, you have health care tied to your job.
Real life gets in the way.
Right. You can't just flip your desk over tomorrow and declare you are building an empire. You need a tactical blueprint.
You need to execute what is known as the hybrid entrepreneur transition.
I love this concept. Think of your current day job as your first angel investor. Their biweekly salary is the seed funding for your real enterprise. You're taking their capital to fund your escape pod.
That psychological reframing is absolutely critical. You aren't trapped, you are being capitalized. The first tactical step here is to shift your focus from executing tasks to identifying leverage. While you're at your desk, treat the job as a paid incubator. Look for deep systemic problems in your industry that existing software or services are failing to solve.
Start building standard operating procedures. Productize your specific skills.
Yeah, if you are a financial analyst, don't just run the models. Build a macro template that automates the modeling process entirely. You need to train an engine, not just prepare yourself to be a freelancer.
The second step is the validation phase, which requires deploying what's called the MOM test.
This concept from Rob Fitzpatrick is vital.
Do not spend your salary building shiny products or renting office space. You validate your idea at zero cost by talking to potential customers about their concrete historical behavior.
Yes, the biggest mistake early founders make is asking hypothetical questions like, would you buy this idea?
People will just lie to you to avoid hurting your feelings.
Exactly. The MOM test dictates that you only ask about past behavior. You ask, how did you solve this specific problem last month, and how much time or money did it cost you?
Because if they can't point to a specific workaround they are currently paying for or spending hours on, the pain point is not urgent enough to build a business around.
Step 3 is about execution strategy. Replicate proven models. This is often referred to as geo-arbitrage.
You don't need to invent a completely novel concept.
No, look at venture-backed, highly successful business models operating in other geographies. Look at what the Samwer brothers did with Rocket Internet. They took proven Silicon Valley models and executed them flawlessly in European and Asian markets.
You just adapt an existing model to your local regulations and cultural nuances.
The fourth step is purely defensive. Protect your runway. You use your salary to fund your digital validation tests and landing pages, but you must aggressively compartmentalize your startup activities.
This is a legal minefield.
It really is. Never use your employer's hardware, their network, or company time to build your venture. Most employment contracts have intellectual property assignment clauses that state anything you create on company time or equipment belongs to the employer.
You must keep your enterprise strictly confined to your personal time and personal devices to ensure a clean chain of title for your equity.
And this is exactly where ecosystems like starter planes come into play. When you are transitioning out of a job, you face massive structural hurdles: incorporation, trademark filing, compliance.
Starter Planes operates in 56 cities globally. They provide the mentorship and the legal incubation to ensure your corporate structure is sound, and most importantly, they plug you directly into investor networks when it's time to scale aggressively.
They de-risk the transition by providing the architecture that a first-time founder usually lacks. But the core rule remains, as Dr. Shishir Gupta advises, do not build something nobody wants.
Build a solution to a pain point so urgent that customers are willing to commit capital before you've even written the first line of code.
As we wrap this up, I want you, the listener, to ask yourself 3 diagnostic questions this week.
Let's hear them.
Number 1, are you owning the underlying asset, or are you just renting your time to patch someone else's infrastructure?
That's powerful. And number 2, is your primary income stream linear and physically capped? Or is it automated, systems-driven, and capable of scaling without your direct input?
And number 3, are you selling seeds to eat today, or are you enduring the starvation season to plant an orchard that will compound indefinitely?
Mark Zuckerberg noted that in a world changing this quickly, the only strategy guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. You have to be willing to step out into the desert.
But before we sign off, there's a final, highly provocative thought that we really need to address. It's the elephant in the room regarding the future of work.
Oh, this is the AI angle.
Yeah. If we accept the foundational premise that a job is defined by the execution of predictable, repetitive tasks, following standard operating procedures and ensuring compliance, we have to look at the macroeconomic horizon.
What happens to the quote-unquote safe salaried employee when artificial intelligence fully masters execution?
Exactly. We are rapidly entering an era where AI can write functional code, analyze complex legal contracts, generate marketing copy, and manage logistical workflows instantaneously.
If your entire economic value is tied to executing a task, your leverage is dropping to zero. The marginal cost of execution is trending towards zero.
In the next decade, owning the systemic asset, the architecture that actually directs the AI, won't just be a path to wealth. It may be the only form of true job security left on Earth.
That is a terrifying reality,
Hmm.
but it's exactly the paradigm shift we all need to internalize. The cage isn't just locked. The cage is scheduled for demolition.
You can either own the machinery knocking it down, or you can be inside when it happens.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep validating, keep building systematically, and stay curious. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.